Good morning. My name is Maureen Chung. Welcome to Daily Devotional, May the 2nd. The Bible passage is Acts chapter 10, verses 1 to 23a. The title is Surprised by the Holy Spirit. At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion in what was known as the Italian Regiment. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. One day, at about 3 in the afternoon, he had a vision. He distinctly saw an angel of God who came to him and said, "Cornelius." Cornelius stared at him in fear. "What is it, Lord?" he asked. The angel answered, "Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. Now send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon, who is called Peter. He's staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea." When the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called 2 of his servants and a devout soldier who was one of his attendants. He told them everything that had happened and sent them to Joppa. About noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat, and while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its 4 corners. It contained all kinds of 4-footed animals, as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." "Surely, Lord," Peter replied, "I've never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times, and immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. While Peter was wondering about the meaning of the vision, the men sent by Cornelius found out where Simon's house was and stopped at the gate. They called out, asking if Simon, who was known as Peter, was staying there. While Peter was still thinking about the vision, the Spirit said to him, "Simon, 3 men are looking for you. So get up and go downstairs. Do not hesitate to go with them, for I have sent them." Peter went down and said to the men, "I'm the one you are looking for. Why have you come?" The men replied, "We have come from Cornelius the centurion. He is a righteous and God-fearing man who is respected by all the Jewish people. A holy angel told him to ask you to come to his house so that he could hear what you have to say." Then Peter invited the men into the house to be his guests. Yesterday we saw in Acts chapter 9 that the first century church in Jerusalem was faced with persecution. Many new believers were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. A new character, Saul, emerged. Jesus revealed himself to this staunch persecutor of his church and converted him into Christ's passionate follower. He would later be renamed to Paul, the missionary who brought the gospel to Europe and who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament Bible. In Acts chapter 10 here, the narrative returns to Peter, who got a rude awakening in taking the gospel to the Gentiles. Peter was surprised by the Holy Spirit. First, God is at work. Just follow him. Caesarea was the Roman military headquarters of Palestine or Israel. In Acts chapter 8, verse 10, we are told that Philip, the deacon evangelist, eventually settled there. But at this point of Peter's involvement with Caesarea, Philip was still somewhere between Azotus and Caesarea along the Mediterranean coast. it is safe to assume that the gospel of Christ had not arrived here in scale. However, a Roman centurion in the Italian Regiment heard of the Jewish God. He and his family were devout and God-fearing. He also gave generously to those in need. While he was praying at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, the Jewish prayer time, he had a vision whereby God's angel spoke to him. Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as memorial offering before God. Now send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon, who's called Peter. He's staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea. And Joppa is 30 miles south of Caesarea, and Peter was temporarily living there. God had plans for Peter to bring the gospel to Cornelius. Indeed, God is at work before we even know what is going on. Even though Cornelius and his household were well prepared, Peter was not. Peter was still deep into the Jewish traditional practice that observed strict dietary laws. The kosher food laws forbade them to eat unclean animals, reptiles, and birds. In Leviticus chapter 11, God declared what was ceremonially unclean. For example, camel, rabbit, pig, seafood that does not have fins and scales, like lobster, shrimp, oyster, clam, squid, octopus, etc. Eagle, vulture, raven, owl, gull, hawk, bat, winged insects that walk on all fours, rat, lizard, etc. God's purpose was to make his people holy, distinct and different from the nations around them. They were reserved for God's use alone. If they defiled themselves by eating the forbidden food, they would have to go through purification procedures to reconcile themselves with God. The rules were a test of their obedience to God, for they belonged to God. Furthermore, due to their kosher food laws, they could not associate or eat with non-Jews. It gradually grew into a false sense of superiority over others. God had to rewrite Peter's traditional Jewish mind. In Peter's God-induced trance, he saw a large sheet being let down from heaven. In it were all the non-kosher items. A voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I've never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time. "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times, and immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. Take note that the non-kosher items came down from heaven. The voice of the Lord came from heaven. Thus the command to eat the non-kosher food came from heaven. Moreover, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. Did God change his mind? Now, calling the impure clean? Did God really make them clean? The non-kosher items is a symbol for the Gentiles. Before Peter could figure out the answer, Cornelius' men arrived at the house where Peter was staying. The Holy Spirit answered the riddle. "Simon, 3 men are looking for you. So get up and go downstairs. Do not hesitate to go with them, for I have sent them." Without the preparation by the Holy Spirit, Peter would not have invited the Gentiles into the house. And Peter would not have consented to go with them to Caesarea. Peter was surprised by the Holy Spirit. I need to be aware of my ethnocentric biases. Since the Second World War, when both my parents were veterans, I have heard many stories about the inhumane treatments the Chinese endured under Japanese occupation. The Germans repented for their war crimes, but the Japanese have not. Am I excluding them from my prayers for God's salvation? There are countries that persecute Christians today. I have said to myself that I would never visit those countries. But I respect the itinerant missionaries who bring the gospel to them. On the other hand, I have dreamt of multi-ethnic, multiracial church in Canada that breaks through barriers. In the head, I know what is right, but emotionally I cannot rise above my biases. That is why I want to cultivate friendship with individuals of other ethnicities. I want to know them personally and see the image of God in them. Since pastoring Chinese churches for the last 37 years, I have lost touch with my non-Chinese, non-Christian friends. I hope by the grace of God that I can rectify this problem. That is why I have been asking God to bring 2 or 3 Afghan families into my life. All I need to do is to be their friend while they adjust to life as a refugee in this welcoming land of Canada. When we get to heaven, Christians of all ethnicities will be living side by side with each other. Why not start now? Let me be surprised by the Holy Spirit. Thank you for sharing time with me, and may God bless you too. Be surprised by the Holy Spirit. See you tomorrow. Please like and subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to get new video updates. Thank you.